Destroying the passenger rail lines in America directly caused every single livability issue that we currently face today as a nation.
Literally anybody that's done any kind of research between the United States and Europe can tell you that the infrastructure differences are diabolical. On one hand, the continent of Europe has been around since the dawn of the dinosaurs, and on the other hand, the society in the United States is relatively fresh, so we have a lot of interesting things to look into in this video today. But before we get started, if you guys have any experiences or anything that you've noticed through the United States or even through your ventures in Europe, let me know in the comments down below. And that's exactly what we will be diving into today: the infrastructure differences between the United States of America and literally most, if not all, of the countries throughout Europe through a few TikTok videos and people's experiences between the two. And you guys are going to go ahead and help me verify these in the comments down below. But before we get started, make sure you guys go ahead and do me a favor and like the video and subscribe if you haven't already. Let's check out this first post.
Destroying the passenger rail lines in America directly caused every single livability issue that we currently face today as a nation. You wouldn't know it today, but at one point in time, the US had the world's largest passenger rail service with over 1 billion customers a year. And at one point in time, the Pennsylvania Rail Company was literally the largest company in the world. And this power was reflected in both the trains themselves, which had Art Deco styling, as well as the architectural marvels of train stations that were placed in the middle of city centers within walking distance of all of the things that you would need in that city. And then the Fire Nation attacked. Specifically, this man, Henry Ford, and other automotive bigwigs started lobbying city planners to start constructing their cities not around people, and definitely not around trains, but around the automobile. And what we got was this, where huge parcels of every single human civilization is devoted not to like gardens, not the parks, not to even like office buildings or money-making centers, but the parking and the cars. Car parks, places where cars get to go and play. Because everything is devoted around car world, nothing is devoted around human world. So there's nothing within walking distance within most cities. You literally cannot operate if you do not have a car. Car-centric city planning and debilitating regulations that were put on the rail industry at the height of its power resulted in this, look how they massacred my boy image. And what did we get for this trade? Statistically, 25 minutes of time in this every single day for the rest of your life. But I don't know, man, maybe one more lane actually will fix it. Follow for more stuff you can't stop thinking about.
And that right there is absolutely tragic. Henry Ford messed it up for everybody. Oh my gosh. At one point, America really took pride in its rail system and it was on the up and up. And all of a sudden, Henry Ford's like, actually, what if we built the entire nation around vehicles instead of the train system that clearly already works? But that's something that I've been talking to a lot of my friends about and a lot of you guys in the comments section. The society rooted in capitalism. America has been rooted in capitalism since its inception for the most part. And it's only gotten worse over the years. And it's kind of sad when you think about it. And it's funny because there were a lot of other posts that I saw in regards to the initial image in what we just watched, where it showed the European train systems versus the United States train systems and stuff like that. And you can see that our intercontinental trains aren't really that effective anymore because, again, you go anywhere in the United States, you need a car to survive. You need a car to drive to your local grocery store, gym, anything, because everything is so spread out. And yes, that's kind of the same thing depending on what country you go to and visit throughout Europe, but a lot of those countries have very thorough and elaborate public transportation systems, which is incredible to me. It's funny to me because I look at it and I'm like, man, like one of the things I love about living in Korea, for instance, is I use the public transportation system here all the time. I save so much money. I don't have to worry about buying a car if I don't want to. I can just travel literally anywhere. Now, there's some places that are harder to get to than others if you don't have a vehicle, but it's so refreshing knowing that I don't have to spend money on gas or insurance or a car payment and whatnot. You know what I mean? And I do think that people should have the ability to drive around in a regular car if they would like to, but I also think in the same breath that it would be very beneficial, especially for the United States, to have the ability to commute anywhere in the United States of America via public transportation if you did not want to purchase a vehicle. And of course, by design, the United States is structured for you to get a vehicle and you're at the mercy of the car dealerships or other people, loan companies, whatever, so you can secure a vehicle and pay your way into a hole. Let's go ahead and check out the comments because they definitely had a lot to say. And our first comment says, you can be as patriotic as you want, man, but having trains is just convenient and cool. And that's what I'm saying. When I say we should have a more thorough and elaborate public transportation system, I'm saying that we should have that in addition to the vehicle situation that we currently have now in the United States. But we should just make the public transportation transportation more readily available to people in every single state throughout the United States. So if people want to go without having their own personal vehicle, they can take the public transportation and, kind of just thrive through that. Railroad pensions predate Social Security. We used to have our priorities straight. Yeah, the American dream, aka capitalism on roids, thrived throughout the years, and how capitalism works is there has to be a loser. If there are winners, there has to be losers, and unfortunately we've gotten to a point now where things are designed the way that they are designed, which again is good in some ways and has, a few caveats in other directions. So I do think that having an effective railway system would completely change the game. I think most Americans would be able to appreciate that. And then for the Americans who love their cars, they love their trucks, the United States as a whole is already designed for you to have those types of vehicles. So that would be great. You could still have those, but through a well-structured public transportation system. Going to Amsterdam last year really opened my eyes to this. I didn't realize how much unconscious stress we have around car culture, paying, finding parking, gas, insurance, car maintenance, and not being able to walk to basic amenities. That's why so many folks want to live in New York City, just saying. Exactly. It's the ease of access in a lot of those big cities in the United States, which drives a lot of people to those big cities. Why are so many people living in these small areas that have such impactful, effective, innovative systems? Well, it's simply because it's structured in a way that benefits the people.
You know what, dude? That's a good point. You are correct. Because it's a proven fact that America does not have a developed or maintained infrastructure that supports the heavy loads.
Let's take a quick look at what this gentleman is responding to before I let him talk a little bit more. The comment that he's responding to says, irrespective of when, common sense means an infrastructure that supports the heavy loads to support industry should have been maintained and developed. I don't think that's a controversial statement, but let's see what this gentleman has to say.
To support industries. Because America definitely does not have just as much, if not more, depending on your sources, of course, miles of rail in our singular country than all of the countries in Europe combined.
Let's compare how big the railway systems are all together throughout all of Europe compared to the United States. So after doing a little bit of research, we can see here that the United States does in fact have far more railway in miles than all of Europe combined. And what makes this interesting is the US has over 200,000 miles of railway, where you compare that to Europe's 94,000 miles of railway. So as far as that goes, he's absolutely correct. Most of it's designed for freight and transporting assets and whatnot, not really designed for passenger travel. Some of it is for sure, but most of it is mainly for shipping assets and whatnot. So that's where we can take a nice little look at Europe, where most of their system is designed for passenger travel and freight. So it feels like it's more effectively designed in that regard. But let's just look at a few comparisons and a few contrasts between the two railway systems and kind of make a decent little breakdown as far as like which system might be a bit more effective or not based on what's presented. For the United States, the total size, again, like we said, is over 200,000 miles of track, the largest in the world. So he absolutely was right there. The primary use, it's dominated by freight, with the freight lines making up about 80% of the total network. That's huge. The passenger rail, it's less developed and utilized compared to Europe, with most passenger service provided by Amtrak on freight-owned tracks, except for the Northeast Corridor. The electrification is very low at only about 1% of the total track, and the high-speed rail is very limited, primarily concentrated again in the Northeast Corridor, the first portion of America that was colonized. So when we look at Europe, the total size is over 94,000 miles of track, and its primary use, since it's more denser and more passenger focused, it has a strong emphasis on intercity and high-speed passenger rail connecting major cities. The passenger rail, it is a central component of the transportation system with extensive regional, intercity, and high-speed networks. And as far as the electrification goes, there's a higher percentage of network that is electrified compared to the United States. States, which is really good for the environment. And of course, we have the high-speed rail, a highly integrated system that is a common alternative to flying and driving for many journeys, which again is safer for the environment. So when we look at this, we can see that bigger might not necessarily be better, and it could be better just depending on what you're looking at. If you're looking at how the continent of Europe takes care of its people through these transportation systems and whatnot, then yes, it's very well structured for people to navigate and travel very effectively from country to country, place to place within each country and whatnot. When you look at the United States, it's primarily designed for business transactions, right? When you have a massive shipment of cargo, like you have a system that is designed to transport all of those things to every major port in the United States, effectively driving some type of revenue, but at the expense of the people when it's in regards to having effective passenger travel. Tons of people that I know, and plenty of people probably watching this video, would love to have the option to get on some type of train or some type of public transportation option to get from point A to point B, so they don't have to use a vehicle and pay all of those additional fees to maneuver. We do have the largest railway system in the United States, and I was not aware of that until just doing a little bit of research just now. So he does have a point, but I do think that having the option to use public transportation is very important, and I think it would also help drive more tourism. I mean, think of how many more states would get tourists from all over the world, which would effectively bring in more money for the country if you had a very effective passenger railway system.
Or just, roads for that matter. I suppose that's something we should aim for, because it's definitely not the case right now. It's just insanity to think that a country that values individualism over collectivism would value having a personal vehicle over, public transportation like rail. It's just hard to imagine why a country that has more car ownership than the entirety of Europe, less regulations around that ownership, much more energy independent and lower fuel costs, would not lean towards something as novel as trains. While we do have our issues here with public transportation, it's things like this that really just make us wonder, when did you start cleaning windows with your tongue? How often do you pull on doors that are labeled push? You see, your commentary can largely be dismissed as just anti-American bias or xenophobia, whichever you want to call it. Because while we do have certain issues with public transportation, so does Canada and Mexico. But America, right? Is Orange Man bad?
I love it when people deflect like this. Listen, we have a very clear issue with our public transportation system throughout all of the United States, and deflecting on neighboring countries isn't going to solve our problem. I'm saying that it makes sense to have a system like that in place in the United States. We already have a very effective railway system that allows us to transport items, assets, cargo, freight throughout all of the United States, but the passenger railway is severely lacking, so imagine just improving that.
European architecture is 10 times better than America. I'm in Portugal right now, and look at this. All the buildings are old. They haven't updated them in 500 years. The ground is all cobblestone and, rock. There's loud music going. There's restaurants in the middle of the street. You don't find this in America. If you got dropped into a random city in America, you would never be able to tell what city you're in because they all look the same. These ugly buildings that are all boxy in the same design. Meanwhile, in Europe, they have this beautiful design, crosses in the middle of the street, the cool roads. It's just amazing, man. Why can't America be like this?
Well, it is pretty cool. It's remarkable how intricate a lot of the buildings are throughout all of Europe, right? I mean, obviously it's been around a lot longer than the United States of America has. So of course you're going to have buildings that are older than the entirety of the United States of America. And it'll dry. It creates things like this where people are able to appreciate it a little bit more. But I will say, I do disagree with part of his statement there. No matter where you go in the United States, I don't think all of our buildings look the same, because obviously you can take a major city like New York with tall buildings, skyscrapers and whatnot, and then also go to a state like Florida and look at the cities in Florida. I mean, Miami looks totally different than Destin, and Destin looks totally different than Fort Walton. The houses are going to be a little bit different based on like where you're located and whatnot. And of course the tundra, because the United States being as big as it is, there's all different types of places and weather and tropical storms and things like that the buildings have to kind of be designed around. Europe is a conglomerate favorite of older countries, right? So obviously you're going to have history on that side, right? You have buildings that have been around for forever. And of course, there are things that they've done to preserve the longevity of these buildings and stuff like that. And of course, back in the day, like they had a different system on how to build things or whatever. So we see what we see now because it's just been around for a while. So it's different. I will say because America is newer, there are some advantages and disadvantages. One of the big advantages I think that America has over, most places throughout Europe is we're able to make changes very quickly because, bro, it's collapsible. We could build up and tear down buildings in minutes. Damn near. Bro, Los Angeles looks distinctly different from most other cities. And that's what I'm saying. It's filled with like adobe houses, tall buildings in some places, and it's very spread out, like super spread out. It's kind of crazy looking over there. You'll get different houses and buildings and stuff out there everywhere, honestly, throughout the United States. But again, when it comes to the building integrity, that's a whole different discussion. Most of America's buildings aren't really that great, but some of them are built real sturdy. It depends on where you go. Floridian here. I now live in Lisbon. I'm never going back. Just move here. It only gets better. Again, like I say all the time, get out there, go travel if you can afford it, and see the world. See what you appreciate about various things. I think for a lot of Americans and stuff right now, it is probably the easiest time in the world to throw some type of criticism at the United States. I mean, it's always been pretty easy to throw some criticism at us, and we try to fire back with our own criticisms of the people criticizing us. Almost every big city in Europe that has some history looks like this. Renovating them also takes so much time because we find things from the 1300s. And that's what I was kind of saying earlier. America has this advantage over all of Europe for the most part because all of Europe has been around way longer than the United States. So in the United States, you're able to renovate and spontaneously build new buildings and housing projects and stuff like that within a few days, months, weeks, whatever, and not think twice about it. The problem is we use the world's cheapest material, so they don't stay up for very long, or they do stay up, but they have a series of diabolical issues. Oh, and since we're on the topic of infrastructure, we might as well talk about HOAs and HOA fees. So HOAs stands for homeowners associations, and when you buy houses in America, you typically have to pay some sort of monthly fee, and what they basically do is they control what you can and can't do on your own property / neighborhood so they can maintain the property value in said neighborhood, which I think is insane because if you're buying a house out of your pocket, why can't you make certain changes to the home that you spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on? I'm not sure if you guys have something like this throughout Europe. I'm pretty sure you do. I don't know what it is, so if you guys could let me know in the comments down below what the equivalent of something like that would be, let me know, because that to me was one of the most insane things I think I've ever seen. Good Lord, these fucking house shingles are fortified. You can see the sheer difference off the rip. You could see the American house shingles were kind of like, okay, a little flimsy, whatever. And those European shingles hit different, bro. Oh my God. Only thing is, again, a lot of how houses are designed have everything to do with like the tundra, right? Like whatever, location that they're in and weather systems that they have to deal with and whatnot. I mean, it looks like the shingle, the little like housing shingles and stuff like that are way more powerful in whatever location this is in Europe. I mean, I'm pretty sure it's Germany. The German roofs look damn near bulletproof, bruh. Like they're very sturdy.
Line and put them nice and close together.
Like, listen to the ASMR of them laying down those damn shingles in Germany, bro. Like, it sounds like they're putting down a Harry Potter book, man. Like, it just sounds so dense. And then when you hear us lay down shingles in the United States on our roofs, man, it sounds like we're laying down a stack of papers. Like, if you look at the roofing for America's roofing stuff and you look at Germany's roofing, man, it's night and day. I mean, you can cut American roofing with an X-Acto knife. That's diabolical. As a Scot, we can get winds up to 120 miles per hour. Couple of slates off, American house would be blown away. Literally, I just met with a friend yesterday and she's from the Netherlands and she was like, hey, can I ask you a quick question? And I'm like, yeah, sure. And she's like, why are your houses built so fragile? Like, they're so flimsy. And I'm like, I don't know, but I feel like the big bad wolf would go through our houses so quick. Like, if the three little piggies were in the world somewhere, right? The first two piggies' houses would have been built in the United States, and the final piggy that had the fortified brick house would be somewhere in Europe. You should see how Mexican houses are built to last thousands of years. Listen, I could believe that. Adobe houses are a whole different beast, an entirely different beast. And, you know, I mean, very well put together. Imagine a huge piece of metal flying through your house during a hurricane going over 100 to 200 miles an hour. Imagine if you got hit by that. I'm not sure if you're suggesting that we don't use that type of roofing, because if a hurricane hit an area that had houses with those types of roofs, the roofing would kill people. I'm pretty sure the roofing damn near already kills people now, along with the light posts, siding of the buildings, and all kinds of stuff. I mean, the houses damn near blow over when you sneeze. All right. Fair is fair, right? You know, you picked some of the most beautiful places in the United States and compared it to a corner of Italy. I mean, you can pull very beautiful places throughout any part of Europe and put them side by side to any American location, and it all just boils down to preference when it comes to visuals, right? Because, I mean, it is different. It is very different. I think in general, there are some things that are far better throughout Europe than they are in the United States. I will say again, when you look at, like, you know, again, you can travel throughout all of the United States in your own personal vehicle, and it's super effective. The cities, towns, and what have you are efficiently designed for you to have your own personal vehicle. So there's plenty of parking no matter where you go, where you drive, and it's very accommodating for your own personal vehicle. Throughout Europe, it's a little different because obviously it's been around since the dawn of the dinosaurs and stuff. So, like, it's harder to find, you know, probably parking in a lot of places. And yes, you can drive a lot of places and stuff as well, but a lot of times it might be more effective to take the public transportation systems. And I'm not saying it's not effective at all to have a vehicle. You can definitely have a vehicle and you can definitely navigate quite efficiently, but I think that that's definitely an area that America probably does a lot better than Europe. Because of that, we can see all kinds of corners and cracks of the United States that, you know, we were probably never familiar with before. Now, again, I do think that railway system could get an update. You know what I'm saying? Like, maybe we add in a little bit of a passenger side update in the near future, if that's possible. If we had free healthcare, no country could top us. Underneath that, the comment says improper food and no gun violence and proper pensions for retired people and sorry, you stink. Listen, that person that responded was absolutely cooking. I'm not gonna lie, bro. Like, if we had all the other things, maybe we could be back in the running to say, hey, look, we're up there. We're up there. The United States recently has just been on a generational run of changing things that probably don't need to be changed. Some changes were made that were more effective than others. A lot of changes were interesting. Showing beautiful parts of America and the baddest of Italy. Typical American, Italy is 100 times more beautiful than the US. And obviously that's a very subjective opinion because the United States is massive. Italy is but one country. So there are beautiful, beautiful, beautiful places in Italy, throughout Italy for sure. Oh my gosh, to die for. But in the same regard, the United States is massive and there's a metric fuck ton of nature throughout the United States that you can easily say is just as beautiful, if not more in some locations. I mean, if you look at Yellowstone National Park, for instance, I mean, good Lord. You could ogle at that for eons. Go anywhere in Colorado in the mountains and oh my goodness, oh, it's amazing. So I guess this is more of kind of like a preference of what you like more than another thing. And the video itself is quite divisive. So obviously people were a little bit charged in the comments and I can get that. But let me know what you guys think in your opinion. Do you think that Italy is more beautiful than all of the United States? That's a pretty hefty statement there. That's a pretty hefty statement. Now, if you said all of Europe might be prettier than all of the United States, that would still be a hefty statement because, I mean, they're just different places at the end of the day.
Love to be like, oh, but Americans aren't well traveled. They can't point out where Switzerland is on a map.
Yeah, so recently I went to New Zealand for a couple of months, and every night I'd be in some hostel with a bunch of Europeans sitting around a table, and they'd always kind of chuckle when I told them that I'd only been to 4 countries. But I had to explain to them, look, I'm from Maryland. I've spent several summers working in Yellowstone National Park, and I had to show them the distance. So this up here is where I live in Maryland, and I would drive across to Yellowstone National Park, and you'll see I'm not even close to the West Coast. It's about 2,100 miles or 3,400 kilometers if you're into that. The people sitting at the table were always pretty shocked to realize that it would actually been a shorter distance for me to drive from London, England to Athens, Greece than it is from Maryland to Yellowstone. And keep in mind, I've done that drive 4 times. So just because I haven't been to a lot of countries does not mean I'm not well traveled.
This is where the conversation can kind of play both sides, from the infrastructure conversation to more of a general comparison contrast thing between the United States and Europe, right? Especially when it comes to traveling. First of all, let's open up this with, what do you guys consider to be well-traveled? I just had a very extensive conversation with another friend yesterday about what well-traveled means. I actually have a video I'm working on right now where I go around asking a few people and looking through the internet, kind of trying to decipher what the term well-traveled means. Because if you ask any American what well-traveled means, if any American has traveled to more than 5 or 6 states within the United States, they're like, yeah, you're well-traveled. You've navigated the United States. You've had to see different places, cities, structures, and had to adapt to a few things, whatever. And honestly, I agreed. I'm like, wow, like, yeah, like if you travel to, like, let's say, like, you know, all 50 states, for instance, or most of the states in the United States, you're well traveled. You had to get in your vehicle or take some flights and travel all over the place because you are traveling, right? And if you travel to different states, you would be essentially well traveled. But then I was reading a lot of comments from you guys, and you guys opened my eyes a little bit, and you're like, no, dude, like, well traveled means getting out of your entire area and actually trying to integrate with a different culture completely. So being like, let's say if you traveled from the United States to Mexico, for instance, or the United States to Canada, or the United States to Iceland, or Norway, or Korea, Japan, things like that, you know, they're entirely different from each other. So you have to adapt. You have to, you know, use a new currency, right, to do business transactions and stuff. If you were to, you know, do a transaction in cash, you have to learn different languages or learn how to navigate around you not knowing the language. You have to navigate around different laws that are federal laws in these different locations you're going to. So there are very big changes, and there's overarching cultural and historical differences that make those places entirely different than all of the United States. And then I was like, whoa, okay, so well-traveled means being ingratiated and integrated with a bunch of different cultures and stuff. That makes a little bit more sense. Australia's biggest state is 4 times the size of Texas. We travel overseas extensively. That sounds insane. That sounds insane. Yes, America is huge, but it's still the same people with slight accent differences, not the same as visiting other countries entirely. Now, for my Americans watching this that are about to jump down this individual's throat, that's why I explained what I explained earlier. Listen, there are obviously some major accent changes depending on where you go throughout the United States, but at the end of the day, all of us abide by the same federal laws, rules, and what have you, so it's not that big of a difference. Everybody basically speaks the same-ish language. Obviously, there's a lot of people that speak different languages in the United States, but overarching, you know, there's obvious, and every school curriculum, the standard is English and whatnot. The overall benefits or the lack thereof is a federal thing, so there's not much that you're changing about yourself to navigate these different places throughout the United States. Now, some places have different nuances and whatnot, and different state laws that are, you know, greatly impactful, but not in the same way that it would be impactful if you were to travel from like the United States to Qatar or the United States to, again, Japan. That would make you more well-traveled, I think, based on what I'm seeing from you guys in the comments down below. So our next comment says, well-traveled doesn't mean the mileage you've traveled. It's about the different cultures you've visited. And this is where it gets tricky, because I don't think one begots the other. I do understand what you're saying, right? Well-traveled means encountering different cultures and drastically changing yourself or how you have to navigate to when you also like, you know, fly or whatever, however you navigate to these different countries and stuff, going through customs, border control, things of that nature. But that's something I'm going to break down in a later video. You guys let me know how you feel about that in the comments down below. This video basically covered a lot of the differences when it came to the United States and all of Europe. So that's actually pretty cool. Let me know what you guys think about that in the comments down below. What are some things you appreciate or don't appreciate about the United States' infrastructure, and what are some things that you appreciate and don't appreciate about any country in Europe's infrastructure?